start a new chapter from your whole science book, chapter 1, which is Indian economy. So, as we all know that the British government ruled over India starting from 1757, and it was only on 15 August 1947 that India got independence. Okay, so before we reach on to this point, let's see what are the various factors relating to the preparations of our constitutions and India getting independence. Okay, so now here you see, as we got independence on 15th August 1947, our main responsibility was preparing of the constitution, but it did not come as easily as it is. So you can see over here there was one incident, which is the conducting of the general elections in England on July 1945, wherein the Labour Party won. So now at that point of time, Clement Attlee, who is a member of the Labour Party, he was made the president, and President Clement Attlee was sympathetic towards the Indians. So he sent cabinet mission to India on March 1946. So now on March 1946, the cabinet mission was sent with 3 members. The 3 members were Sir Stafford Cripps, A.V. Alexander, and Lord Ethick Lawrence. So these 3 people will be helping the Indians in framing the Constitution of India. At the same time, to form the Constituent Assembly, which will be working for framing the Constitution of India. Now, on 9th December 1946, the first sitting of the Constituent Assembly was done, which was presided over by Dr. Sachindananda Sinha. So now, as we were preparing the Constitution, the concept of democracy was always kept in mind. Now, Constitution and democracy are complementary to each other. Constitution means the rules and regulations which are required for governing our country. And democracy, it talks about the government of the people, by the people, and for the people. And that's why both of them are required to be taken together, and it is very important constituents for the framing of our constitution. So while framing the constitution, the concept of democracy has been kept in mind. So now, talking about the time period required for framing our constitution or completing the total process of writing down the constitution, it took about 11 sittings. The members of the Constituent Assembly had to sit for 11 times in the office to prepare our constitution. So which took about a period of 2 years, 11 months and 18 days completely. And on 29th August 1947, the drafting committee was formed, and Dr. B.R. Ambedkar was made the chairman of this drafting committee. The main purpose was to draft the constitution. So there were 7 members altogether under this drafting committee. Now on 26 November 1949, the prepared constitution was submitted to President Dr. Rajendra Prasad. But you can see over here, India did not get republic on this particular date. As you have already learned in your history chapter, that India has already declared complete independence or Purna Swaraj on 26 January 1930. So there was an emotional connection with that incident, and as a result, India found it apt to declare republic only on 26 January 1950, and hence India was declared republic on that particular date. Now, starting from 15th August 1947 to 26 January 1950, India was governed under this Act, Government of India Act 1935. This one I have already mentioned in your previous class also in the history chapter. Under the Act of 1935, provincial autonomy was granted. So, till India got republic, India was governed under this Act of 1935. Now, we will go to what is preamble. Now, preamble is considered to be the introduction to a constitution. Introduction means just like when you study a book, you find a page on introduction which talks about the total content of the book in short. Similarly, preamble also talks about the total constitution in brief. It also is considered to be the soul of the constitution. Now, just like a soul is so much important for our body, we believe that it is only because of the presence of soul we are alive. Similarly, the importance of a constitution depends upon the existence of a preamble. Next is conscience. Conscience is the knowledge of deciding what is right and wrong. So when we see the constitution, when we see the preamble, the introductory part, we get an idea as a citizen of the country of how to conduct ourselves. We get to know about the right and wrong side of conducting ourselves. So that idea we get through the preamble of our constitution. So we call it as a conscience. Threshold. Threshold is a point of entering, or we can say point of beginning. So now as a citizen of the country, you might be very confused if there is no rules and regulations. You won't be able to make out how to conduct yourself as a citizen of that country. So preamble provides you the guide. It serves you as a starting point to make yourself conduct as a citizen of the country. Keys. So whenever we have a key, we can enter into a room, we can enter into the destination we wanted. Similarly, preamble also serves as a key. We get an idea about the total constitution in brief through the preamble. So it contains ideals, philosophy, objectives. Okay, so ideals talks about what are the level or what are the standard we wanted our country to reach. Philosophy talks about the belief system with which India will be progressing or taking forward. Now objectives talks about the purpose of conducting our country. So all these are contained in the preamble. So as a citizen of the country, when we see the preamble, we get an idea about how to conduct ourselves, or what are our rights, or what are our responsibilities towards the country. Now as we read the preamble, we will find this particular line, we the people of India. So now seeing this line, the makers of the constitution made sure that all the people of the country, irrespective of their caste, creed, color, religion, should be included. Their voice should be made a part of this constitution, and as such the word we the people of India has been used to make sure that no person or no minority community and their sentiments, culture, tradition, religion are hurt. So this shows that the makers of the constitution took so much time and effort to make sure that the sentiments of all the people are respected and the culture and traditions of all the people are respected at the same time. So in the preamble of our constitution, we will find the mention of these important words. Let me read them out first. Sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic and republic. Okay, so out of these 5 terms, you can see over here socialist and secular. This is a new term added only on 18th December 1976 under the 42nd Amendment of our Indian Constitution. So let me go to the meaning of this term sovereign. Now sovereign talks about the supreme power of the state, that is the country. So here the country will not be governed by any outside powers. That means our country will not be governed by any other foreign country, nor it will be under the pressure of any private individual. Okay, so that is the concept of sovereign. Next is socialist. Socialist means the government will be taking any decisions keeping in mind the benefits of the larger sections of the people in the society. That means all the means of production and distribution will be all nationalized. People or the common people will be kept in mind whenever the government make any sort of decisions. The government will see that they give equal opportunity to all and equality of opportunity and status are maintained. At the same time, the national income of the country should also be equally distributed to all the states to maintain the concept of socialism. Next we have secular. Secular means the rights of an individual to take up any religion that they want. This also means that any state will not be formed based on religion. Okay, and the government will not be appreciating or favoring any particular religion or providing any sort of facilities or opportunities to a particular religion, and all the religions of the country will be treated equally. Next we have democratic. So under the concept of democratic, or which we have already mentioned, democracy, here the people will be electing the representatives, and these representatives will be working for the country, will be governing the country. So the overall administration will be carried out by the elected representatives of the people, and these elected representatives will be responsible for answering in terms of any sort of policies and plans which have been executed by them. So the people will be administering the elected representatives. Next we go to the term republic. So republic means that the head of the state or president will be elected by the people. So here the people do not directly elect the president, but the elected representatives of the people elect the president. So in India, the post of a president is not hierarchical. That means the son and daughter of the president cannot become the next president. They have to be appointed by the elected representatives of the people. So now in the preamble we will also find these very important terms which are a very important part of our preamble as well. So the first term is justice. Here justice talks about social, economic and political justice. Social justice talks about the equality of status in the society. Economic justice talks about the equality of opportunity in terms of participations in the various jobs and opportunities. Political opportunity talks about the rights for voting. Now next comes the liberty. Liberty talks about the freedom to express, the freedom of thought, freedom of belief, freedom of maintaining our faith. So it may be somewhat related to our religion also, and it may be talking about the freedom to express, maybe freedom of talking even against the government if the government is not functioning well. So liberty talks about that concept. Now next we have equality. So here we are talking about equality of status and equality of opportunity, treating everyone equally irrespective of their positions, post, okay, and giving equal opportunity to all. Next we have this concept of fraternity. So fraternity talks about the concept of unity and integrity of the country. It talks about the unity amongst the people in terms of the diversity of culture, religion that we have in our country. So now, during the time of the preparations of the constitution, objective resolutions was released by Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru on 22nd January 1947. So let's see the 8 points which are under this objective resolution. The first point here, it mentions that India is declared to be independent, sovereign and republic. So sovereign and republic I have already explained over here. So now later on the term independent has been removed. So this is the first point. Second point, here it says that India will be formed a union of states, and this will be formed by combining the British ruled India. That means those portion of India which was ruled by the British, including the princely kingdoms. That means those kingdoms which were ruled by the local kings, okay, taken together will be forming India. This is the second point. Third point, here it says that India will give importance to this concept of social, economic and political justice. Again, the concept of equality and religious liberty. So here religious liberty talks about the concept of secularism as well. Now next point, number 4, it says that importance will be given to the scheduled caste, scheduled tribes, other backward castes and also the minority communities in the country. And as such, you will find that in various schools or colleges, they have a seat reserved for them. At the same time, in terms of applying for any government jobs, you will always find a seat reserved for these people. Next, number 5, safeguard freedom, sovereignty, integrity. Now this is the concept, okay, we will always try to see that freedom of the country is maintained, sovereignty, that means freedom of taking decisions and not to be ruled by anyone. At the same time, integrity, that means unity of the country irrespective of its diversity of culture should be kept in mind. Next, number 6, we should always cooperate, okay, that India will always cooperate and try to maintain any sort of international relationships with other country, maybe through trade or maybe for concepts like maintaining world peace or for the welfare of the people of the world. Next, government will obtain power from the people. So this means that the people will be appointing the government and the government will be responsible to the people. So that means government will be formed only through the people. Number 8, the indigenous princely states, that means the local princely states, if they want to be part of India, they can be included as a union of states, they can be included in India, and they will also be included among the constituent province, and they will be allowed to have self-governance. That means if they would have the intention to be part of India, they can govern their country, they can govern their region by themselves, but through a residuary power. Residuary powers is a power which is completely made by the parliament in cases when the union, under the union list, second and third are not applicable. If it is not mentioned over there, residuary powers will be given. So to these princely states, this power will be given if they are intended to become a part of India. Then this right will be granted only in cases if it is necessary. Let us now learn the concept of federation. So federation is taken from a Latin word fidus, which means agreement. So now India is said to be a federal state. So now you can see the concept over here. It is a federal state because it is a union of states which is united through mutual treaty. That means any states which is a part of India today, they have mutually agreed to belong to India, to be a part of India. And that's why we call our country as a federal state. So now you can see over here, the concept of federalism has been applied in India from the past as well. That means when the Government of India Act 1935 was passed, the federal concept has been already adopted in India way back in the past, before India even got independence. Okay, because at that time provincial autonomy was granted. Okay, so that concept of provincial autonomy means that central government, which is the British government at that time, and the provincial government will be the state government at present today. So the same process is still applicable at present. So we can say that the concept of federalism has been very much familiar to the people of India from the past itself. So now, under the concept of federalism, we have a two-tier government, central government and provincial or state government. We also call the central government as union government. Okay, so these two forms of government will be governing the country as well as making decisions relating to their regions. Okay, so central government will be ruling the overall country and the state government will be ruling the particular state which is assigned to them. So in terms of these two power, the central government will have maximum power in comparison to the state government. Okay, so state governments are given certain responsibilities, certain rights, they can make their decisions on various matters. The central government will not interfere in their functioning. But sometimes whenever it is necessary or it is a matter of financial crisis or country's emergency, central government can interfere and guide the state government in terms of all the matters for the development of that particular region or for the betterment of the country. Okay, now talking about the concept of federalism, this has been first introduced in USA. So that's why USA is called as the homeland of federation. So according to this original concept of federation in USA, you will find that there is dual citizenship, which means that suppose if I am staying in Canada, I can be a Canadian. At the same time, since I am in America, so I will also be an American at the same time. So I will be having two citizenship. But this particular concept is not applicable in India. Okay, we are not adopting the concept of dual citizenship in India. Next, you can see over here, since this concept of federalism which is applicable in USA is not suitable for India, so we found that the Canadian constitution is very much suitable to the conditions in India. As we already know that we have diverse culture, languages, traditions, religions over here in India. So there will be clashes and conflicts if we have to adopt the original concept of federalism as has been applied in USA. So that's why the Indian governments, the makers of the constitution, felt it very much appropriate to refer to the Canadian constitution, and hence this has been suitable and has been applied to our constitution as well. So now, since we haven't adopted the original concept of federalism, so India has been considered as the union of states. Instead of saying federal state, union of states has been considered to be the apt terms. Okay, and it has been included under Article 1 of the Indian Constitution. Okay, so now since we are not adopting the original concept of federalism, India is said to be a quasi-federal state, or which we also call peculiar federation. Okay, so quasi-federal means a state which has adopted a slight concept of unitary government and a slight concept of federal government. Okay, so combined together we call it quasi-federal. Peculiar federation because it's a strange kind of a federation concept that we have adopted. We haven't taken the original concept as which is applicable in USA. So now, as in USA, the states which are combined together to be part of USA, they have the right to secede. That means they have the right to take themselves apart from belonging to America. Okay, but in India, such rights are not applicable to the citizens. Okay, so once they have agreed to be part of India, they have to remain as part of the Indian states. Now in India, we have just one constitution for the overall country. So you can just imagine here, if we have separate constitution for the separate states, how much riots and conflicts will be there. So in order to avoid that, the Indian government, okay, the makers of the constitution have made it very clear that only one constitution should be adopted. And we have just one citizenship. Okay, in comparison to that, there is again dual citizenship, or we can say separate constitutions for each state in USA, which is not applicable in India. Now, talking about the central and state government relationship, in the union list, like the state list, union list and concurrent list, we have seen that in the union list, central government has certain areas where they can make their decisions. In the state list, the state government can make decisions on the various areas. Concurrent list for the state and central government can participate. Okay, but there are many areas like taxation and all. Okay, especially the excise duties part, wherein the government earns enough money from excise duties, but the benefits of which are not received by the state government. So there are certain issues between the central and state government relating to that, and there is conflict between them relating to this. So that's why Sarkaria Commission was formed in 1983, so that the conflict between the state and the central government can be solved by this particular commission. So now, India is following a parliamentary democracy. Now this particular concept has been adopted from England. Okay, so now parliamentary democracy means when the overall decisions of the country are being handled by the elected representatives of the parliament. Okay, so when most of the decisions are taken at the parliament, we call it parliamentary democracy. So as we know that in India we have two houses of the parliament. Okay, one is the Lok Sabha, which we also call House of the People. Another is the Rajya Sabha, or which we also call the Council of States. Okay, so these two houses are responsible for making law in the country. Okay, so first of all, whenever a law has to be formulated, it will be first discussed in the Lok Sabha. Okay, and after getting majority of the vote, it will be passed on to the Rajya Sabha. And in the Rajya Sabha, if they gain majority of the vote in that matter, then it will be now passed on to the president for the final signature. So once it is signed by the president, the particular law will become a bill. Okay, it will be passed and will be implemented throughout the country. So now, let's know about the difference between the parliamentary democracy which has been adopted in India and that is the difference that with England. Okay, because even though we have adopted this concept from England, but it is very much different from that of England. Here also we have tried to adopt only those concepts which will be suitable according to our Indian conditions. So the first difference here is republic. So now as in India, I have already told you that the president is appointed indirectly by the people. It is not hierarchical. But in England, it is hierarchical. Okay, that means their son and daughter can become the next president. So that is one difference. Second difference you can see over here, the functioning of the Rajya Sabha, okay, and the functioning of the House of Lords in England are very much different. They are not same. Next, third point you can see over here, Parliament of England is more powerful. That means once the decision is made, it is not changed. Okay, but if you talk about the Lok Sabha or the Rajya Sabha, every time it's flexible, we can change the laws. Okay, so once a decision is made or once a law is made, it's not fixed. It can be changed at any point of time with the majority of votes received in the parliament. So that's why in comparison to that, Parliament of England is said to be more powerful than the Parliament of India.
Stay home, stay safe.